Attitudes of an immature marriage. Mga kilos o pakikitungo sa hindi hinog o ganap buhay mag-asawa. Marriage, or any true relationship for that matter, is much more complicated than we first figured when we first married. Most couples get married without knowing anything about marriage except the example that their parents set. Love is great, but it doesn't guarantee a good marriage. In fact, if you think about it, you argue and fight the most with people whom you say you love the most. The truth is, almost all of us grew up without having to think of the needs of our parents. Our parents were self-sufficient. We didn't have to take time out of our lives to pander to their needs. Indeed, they pander to our needs, and we got used to that. Then we marry not mom or dad, but some who is as equally spoiled and self-centered as we are. This is a recipe for disaster. As a result, we end up with immature attitudes within our marriage. Attitudes that you don't necessarily outgrow. Here is the list of attitudes of an immature marriage. You will find that you undoubtedly have at least a few of them. 1. I have my rights, or that's not fair. 2. If this doesn't work out, we can just get a divorce or separation or annulment. 3. Marriage is a 50-50 proposition. 4. I didn't grow up this way, or that's not the way mom or dad did it. 5th, I've got to have a life that is separate from my marriage. 6. It's not my problem. You deal with it. 7. You always or you never. 8. That's mine. 9. I don't have to listen to this, or don't you tell me what to do. 10. It's all your fault. These 10 attitudes and are all signs of an immature marriage. If you have some of this, they indicate a flaw in your thinking regarding marriage. It is actually very common to have at least a few of these immature attitudes. After all, it's not like you sent to a 4-year college and graduated with a degree in marriage. No, most of us jump into marriage not knowing much about it. We'll take each attitude one by one, and I'll show you the flaw on the thinking process and what must be done to correct it. 1. I have my rights, or it's not fair. This attitude in a marriage shows a fundamental flaw in your concept or idea of what a marriage is supposed to be. When you get married, the very act of doing so meant that you give up any right to your rights. It should not be my rights or your rights. It should be our rights. Marriage is a unity of two people and all that they are. As long as you hold selfishly to your rights, you can't achieve the true objective of a marriage, the unity of a man and a woman. 2. If this doesn't work out, we can just get a divorce, separation, or annulment. This attitude is incredibly naive. It suggests that there is no commitment, no purpose to the marriage other than one's own gratification. A marriage has to be more than other relationships. It needs a level of commitment that you are willing to give to any other human on this planet. A marriage needs a burning desire to work through any problem, overcome any obstacle, and defeat any trial. If you are hoping that your marriage will be eternal bliss, you are sadly mistaken. All marriages have struggles, and it is the struggles that bind us close together, propel us beyond our own selves, forces to reevaluate our priorities, and focuses us on the true riches in life. Third, marriage is a 50-50 proposition. Marriage is never a 50-50 proposition. That's marks of a rental agreement or a signed contract. Marriage is not a deal. It is a lifelong commitment. If you only intend to put 50% of yourself into the relationship, then I can guarantee that you'll have problems. You don't want just 50% of your spouse love, do you? You want 100%. If both are giving 100% into the marriage, then you are not going to have problems. When you got married, you basically promise to give yourself heart, soul, and mind to the person you married. Even when it comes to problems, it would be wise if you just automatically assume at least 60% of the blame. The reason for this is simple. Your idea of what is 50% of the blame and your spouse could be widely different. If you're willing to go beyond what you believe is your responsibility, you have set the foundation for a true solution to your problem. When it comes to a marriage, a mature marriage is one when you give all of who you are. Fourth, I didn't grow up this way, or that's not the way mom or dad did it. One of the problems that we have when we get married is that most of us only have our parent marriage as a guide for our own. We get used at doing things certain ways just because that's the way we grew up. Don't demand that your spouse react as your mother or father did in their marriage. You need to form a completely unique identity anyway, one that reflects your unique personalities in harmonious unity. Fourth, I've got to have a life that is separate from my marriage. This is a very, very dangerous attitude to have in marriage. Typically, it is men who feel the need to have this more than women do. But either way, having a life outside of your marriage is disastrous for the marriage. Doesn't that mean that you can't do anything without your spouse? No. I like to golf and I play a lot of the other sports. My wife is not the sports type. She rarely goes along when I go to play golf, basketball, or baseball. Still, if she wants to come, I am overdue to have her. I never tell her she can't come. Another danger is forming a mental island that only you go to. This is often the result of problems within the marriage, and you mentally escape by going to a place in your mind and life that your mate cannot come. Fifth, it's not my problem. You deal with it. This one is very similar to some of the ones we have already discussed. However, there is an aspect of this type of attitude that needs to be addressed. Our mates are not our children. Often I let my children flounder or struggle through their problems so that they learn valuable lessons regarding life. My wife, however, is different. If she's going through a problem, we tackle it together. Always, I never just tell her to figure it out or that she's the one who has to worry about it. Folks, this is what marriage is all about. It is a totally unique type of relationship. You choose one person for this type of relationship. It is the most complex of all earthly relationships. Next, you always or you never. When you are upset, you'll make this absolute statement that just are not true. The danger with making such statement is that they do have an impact. A negative one to be sure, but an impact nonetheless. When someone tells you you are always, it sticks in your gut and you remember these words. You begin to harbor resentment and it doesn't matter to you that the other person said them in the heat of the moment or out of danger. You stay away from making wild and outrageous claims. It seems that it is human nature to do this. We do it without thinking to drive home our point to express our emotions. Next, that's mine. It's always a bad sign if all of your positions are divided between you. The table is mine, the couch is yours, the computer is mine, the bed is yours. If you are one, then everything in the house belongs to both of you. There is only one owner, the marriage. Quit it through your head that you are married and things will go a lot better. If I buy a computer, the computer is for both me and my wife. I never worry about what belongs to who. or get upset when she meddles with my stuff. Why should I? It's our stuff. Next, I don't have to listen to this, or don't you tell me what to do? A sure sign of a weak or immature marriage is when you or your spouse is unwilling to listen to criticism or correction. It is natural not to want to be corrected or to hate criticism. You need to be a big enough boy or girl to take the truth from your mate. You don't have to like it, but you ought to be willing to listen to it, consider it, and think of it. Next, it's your fault. Finger pointing and trying to pin fault on each other is pointless. It accomplishes nothing. The blame game is something that immature people do when they feel they cannot win an argument. It's a last resort. Unless you can stop worrying about who's right and who's wrong, you just are not going to solve a single thing. Let me be frank. When a relationship is suffering, who cares who's at fault? Fix it. These 10 attitudes are signs of an immature marriage. Marriage is something vastly deeper and more complex than any other relationship we have. As a result, its function, design, and purpose require a maturity level that, frankly, many of us don't possess. That doesn't mean you cannot learn it, though. Immature marriage for any Filipino couples is very deadly and dangerous. So we Filipino couples must and should be and must have an mature marriage, most specifically and particularly to Christian couples. In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen.